Get started. B'tvach, we're learning as Chutz Refuah Shlema Filan Chaya Baserach. We're at the Mishnah on Yud Beis Amud Beis. These Mishnayos, this next couple of Mishnayos and Gemaras, are a little bit confusing, so you have to pay attention to the details. Lechel k'chatzi zayis ulahakter k'chatzi zayis. It's a continuation of what we've been talking about of a machshavas pigel. When someone has a machshava, let's say while he's doing the kmitza, of any of the avodas, he has in mind he's going to eat a chatzi zayis of the shirayim, and he's also going to be makdir. He's going to burn on the mizbeach. I have chatzi zayis of the kaimitz. It's kosher. She'ein achilo ha'ktara mitzdarfen. These are two separate lanes. You can't combine them to make the shear. You have to have a machshava on a kazayis, and his machshava was only to eat a chatzi zayis of the shirayim together with burning a chatzi zayis of the kaimitz. Zok the Gemara. You can even die from this. Time of the lechel lahakter. The reason why he doesn't combine is because he tried to combine two entirely different things. He says, I'm having in mind I'm going to eat a chatzi zayis of the shirayim together with being makter or half a kazayis of the kaimitz. Halecha v'lechel davar she'ein darcha lechel. But if he intended to eat both parts, meaning it's talking about the same case as far as what he had in mind about, he was thinking again a chatzi zayis of the kaimitz together with a chatzi zayis of the shirayim, but he's planning to eat all of it, even though obviously the kaimitz you're not supposed to eat; it's supposed to be burnt. But he had one intention: I'm eating a kazayis, even though half of it was something that wasn't supposed to be eaten. Mitzdarf, it's mashmitz mitzdarf. It means from the Mishnah it's mashma only because he wants to be oichel and makter. It doesn't. It talks that the way the Mishnah talks is talking about echila and haktara, and that's the problem. So it's mashma. But if it was all achila, it would be good. For the Gemara, how could that be that if he does a chatzi zayis, if he has in mind, he's chayshav on a chatzi zayis lechel of the kaimitz, but tani reisha lechel davar shadachel lechel lahakdel davar shalach darka lahak. In the previous Mishnah, right, we had that long Mishnah, and we said zehaklal. We said, what's the rule? Someone who does any of the avodas, and he has in mind to be makter something that's supposed to be huktar and to eat something that's supposed to be eaten. Davar darka lechel in shein darka lechel loy. The Gemara is understanding that this would be referring to, even if he's talking about two chatzi kazaisim, it's not going to be become piggled. It's not going to passel, right? Halecha, it's mashma lechel davar darka lechel lahakta davar shadarka lahakta. That's what's going to be. It's going to make it passel. It's going to be a machshavas pigel or machshavas psul. Davar darka lechel in shein darka lechel loy. But if it's something that's ein darka lechel, it's not going to passel, even if he has a machshava to eat it. So zok the Gemara, mantana. So who's going to be the Tana of our Mishnah that is not like the mashmayis of the previous Mishnah, which is mashma that even if you're oichel va'oichel, if he has a machshava to eat something she'ein darka lechel, the previous Mishnah had said davar she'ein darka lechel is not going to be good, and our Mishnah's mashma lechel v'lechel is going to be a machshavas psul. Our Mishnah that says if he has which is mashma, if he has a machshava lechel davar she'ein darka lechel, it's going to be mitzdarf. Is Rabbi Eliezer the Amar mechasher me'achilas adam le'achilas mizbeach me'achilas mizbeach le'achilas adam. He holds there's no problem to have a machshava, to have in mind that you're going to eat the kaimitz which is supposed to be burnt, and it's not also similarly. It will also be a machshavas psul to have in mind to burn the shirayim which is supposed to be eaten. The Tanan, where do we see this from? HaKaimitz mincha lechel davar she'ein darka lechel lahakdir davar she'ein darka lahakdir. We learned in the Mishnah This is a Mishnah on Daf Yud Zayin. Someone who done by the kmitza of a mincha. He has in mind to eat something that's supposed to be hokter on the mizbeach, meaning the kaimet. And he has in mind to burn something which is supposed to be eaten, meaning the shirayim. Kosher. The Tanakhama says it's kosher. Rabbi Elazar paisel. Rabbi Elazar says it's pasul. So this Mishnah over here, our Mishnah that we just quoted, is going to be like Rabbi Elazar from Daf Yud Zayin. That's the Gemara's. That's Rabbi Yirmiyah's pshat. Abaya Amar Abai. This is good. Rabbi Yirmiyah. He says it doesn't have to be that our Mishnah is bedafka like Rabbi Elazar. Afilu Tema Rabbanan. Our Mishnah could even be like Rabbanan. Loi Tema halecha v'lechel davar shein darka lechel. Where did you get? Why do we say it has to be like Rabbi Elazar? Because we understood since our Mishnah said lechel kechatzi zayis lahakter chatzi zayis kosher. It's mashma, but if you were oichel a chatzi zayis, then it would be possible because it would be achila and chila. It says don't make that diak. That if he was oichel also davar shein darka lechel, then it would be machshavas psul. So Rashi explains, what does that mean? If he has in mind a chatzi zayis of for machshavas chutzlus mani together with a chatzi zayis of two things that are dover shadarka lechel, but one was for a machshavas chutzlus mani, and one was a machshavas a chatzi zayis of a machshavas chutzlum kaimen. Practically Gemara my kamash one. Why does it have to tell you that mitzvah for behedjik tani lo? Lechel kazayis bechutz, kazayis lamacha, kazayis lamacha, kazayis bechutz, kachatzi zayis bechutz, kazayis lamacha, kazayis lamacha, kazayis zutz, pasul ve'ein by karas. In the previous Mishnah, we had specifically said that if you have in mind to eat a chatzi zayis of the shirayim that was bechutz, half of it was a machshavas chutz and half of it was machshavas zman, that it's going to be mitzdaref. It's going to be, it's going to pasul. Even it's a Gemei Bakaris, whatever we had in the whole discussion about whether the Machlekes Rabbi Yehuda says you go after the first machshava to make it a machshavas pigel, the other mandam. But in any case, it's still going to be pasul in either case. So asul lamali. So why would our Mishnah have to say the same din if it's just repeating the din from the previous Mishnah? Zach the Gemara. If you're going to say, like we had suggested before, it's coming to tell, our Mishnah is coming to tell you that if it's a davar, that it's only going to be possible. If it's a davar shedarka lechel together with a davar she'ein, we have in mind to be oichel, something which is supposed to be eaten, and to be makdir something which is supposed to be hooked or a chatzi zayis, it's not mitzdaref, and it's coming to tell you that it is mitzdaref. Mereisha shamina, we already learned in the Reisha that that's not the case, that you can't be mitzdaref these two. Like we said, that if you have in zin to eat something that is darko lechel, meaning the shirayim, it's going to passel the mincha, mashma, that if he has a mind to eat the kaimetz, it's not going to pass. So the Gemara, Ella, so what is it? So what are you going to say? Our Mishnah is coming to tell you, right? Because we said it can't be just telling you the din that it said, because that was already said. And if it's coming to tell you that the din that it says itself, right? The Mishnah says that if you have a machshavas lechol, a chatzi zayis lechol, and a chatzi zayis lahakter, that it's not going to be mitzdaref. She'en achila vakara mitzdarfen, just like what the Mishnah said. Midiu koresh demesha sham mina. We could be medayik that from the previous Mishnah, from what we said zeh klal, right? We had said in the previous Mishnah on the top of the Yamid, zeh klal kol kaimetz and erzim b'kli amelech v'makter lechol davar, any one of the four avoidus of the mincha, shadarka lechel lahakter davar. So hamakter lechel davar shadarka lechel lahakter davar shadarka lahakter chutzum kari pasul ve'em bekars chutzum zmani pigel v'chayven of kars. whatever. So that, but you could be medayik from that. The hashta mal lechel v'lechel davar shein darker lechel amrit loy mitzdarf. Once you already said to eat something, we can be medayik that if he's eating something together with something that is not darker lechel, we're saying it's not mitzdarf. Lechel lahakta mibaya. Do you have to tell you that if it's not going to both? It's not going to both be achila, but rather it's an achila with a haktar of something shein darker lechel. If we can be medayik from the previous Mishnah that you can't be mitzdaref when he has in mind lechel, something that chatzi zayis or something that's darker lechel, together with being makdir something that's darker, that's together with eating something that's darker lechel. I'm sorry, that's I'm sorry, the other way around. If we're saying it's not going to be mitzdaref, the hashta mal lechel v'lechel davar shedaka lechel amrit le mitzdaref. We were able to medayik that if he's eating the shirayim, a chatzi zayis shirayim, together with eating a chatzi zayis of the kaimut, which is supposed to be burnt, we're saying it's not mitzdaref. Lechel lahakta mibaya. What do we have to tell you the din of where he's being makdir? Certainly, if you can't be mitzdaref to achilas, you can't be mitzdaref achila and aktara. Zohar says, no, that's not a good svara. In lechel lahaktir tzricha, it has to tell you lechel lahaktir. It's not just it's lechel v'lechel. You can't say because lechel v'lechel is not mitzdarf, therefore lechel lahaktir is not going to be mitzdarf. Because when he's being maktir the kaimitz, that's what you're supposed to do with the kaimitz. So it could very well be that lechel v'lechel is not mitzdarf, but lechel lahaktir is mitzdarf. So that's why our Mishnah had to tell you that it's not going to be mitzdarf, even though we can be medayik from the previous Mishnah that lechel v'lechel is not going to be mitzdarf as well. Hajj and Allah kol ha-menachos. Let's start the next parak. Again, we're going to have to. It's going to require attention to detail about what we're talking about. We always have to keep in mind what makes a big part of what makes the principal issue of kachim, which is pigul, it always makes it confusing, is because there's two factors, right? There's the avodah that you're doing when you have the machshava, and what you're being mechashav about, what it is that you're thinking about. And some things do double duty, like we had in kach in zvachim. We had that very often a person does a shchita, having in mind the zrika. Because it has to be, as we know, the machshava has to be on something that's a consumption of the carbon. So when you throw the dam on the mizbeach, the dam is being consumed by the mizbeach, but it's also going to be a machshava. He has in mind a murim being eaten, or if he has in mind eating the basar. All these different things are going to be machshavas about consumption. But zrika is confusing because it could be both. He could have the machshava while he's doing the zrika, and he could have a machshava during the zrika about the achila. So zrika can be in both ways. So now we're going to talk a little bit about. So just to keep that in mind, when we're talking about over here the din of machshavas pigul. While you're doing one of the four avodas of the mincha, you have to keep that in mind as well. Again, let's just remind ourselves, what Shemar is going to say directly a little bit later, that the shchita kabbalah, shchita of a animal, when you bring an animal as a carbon, you shech the animal. That's the first of the avodas hadam. Then there's the kabbalah, where you accept the dam of the animal in a kli. Then you bring the kli to the mizbeach, and then you do the zrika on the mizbeach. Those are the four avodas hadam. And parallel to that, by a mincha, is the kaimitz. The separating kaimitz is parallel to the shchita, and ostensibly putting the kaimitz into a kli. The Gemara is going to talk about this. Is going to be somewhat controversial, but that is similar to the kabbalah of the dam of a carbon in a kli, and then the halacha is the same, right? When you bring the kli with the mincha, it's similar to bringing the dam with the kli with the dam to the mizbeach, and then the zurikas of the dam is similar to the burning of the kaimitz on the mizbeach. Okay.
So
Before
the first step that that it's in that where's the
the shechita is similar to the kmitza. That means you take the fully sarin of silas or whatever it is, or whatever the mincha is made up out of, and the kohen sticks his finger in his three fingers and takes out a fistful. That is similar to shechita.
and then where does he put that? He puts into another kli.
Puts it into another kli. Yeah.
That's the part I was missing. So he has one kli that has it full to the top. He said it's full to the top, can't be missing anything. He takes out his three fingers and he puts into another kli,
Yeah, and then you
and
put the
that kli is the one that they burn. They
and
burn it
not
with the
only
kli.
that, there's also levina going on at the same time, which is going to be very integral to this Gemara. When he takes the kaimitz out, he pushes the levina to the side. He takes out the silas. Then you take the levina off of that kli and put it together with the kaimitz to be burnt.
And the levina is not the oil, right? Levina is the
Levina is the frankincense. No one knows exactly what it is. It was a special kind
okay.
of spice that he took a full kaimitz full. It was a large amount of it. But the shemen was like mixed in before the kmitza.
The yellow was mixed in with the flour. The
Yeah.
spice?
I mean, it depends which carbon, right? You had a minchas chayta that didn't have any
Right.
shemen
That's
at
better.
all. But you had the minchas saita also didn't have shemen. But the typical mincha had shemen. Zok the Mishnah. Hakaimitz asa mincha lechel shirea. Someone who does the kmitz on the mincha and he has in mind he's going to eat the shirayim, or lahakter kaimsa, or he has in mind that he's going to be makter the kaimitz lamachar the following day. Ma'adir Rabbi Yossi b'zeh pigel v'chayiv olav kares. Rabbi Yossi will agree on that's pigel and yechayiv kares. Yeah, you might think, why wouldn't that be pigel? That's a classic pigel. These are all consumptions. So the answer is, I'm going to see why. Lahakta levaynasa lamachar. If he has in mind that he's going to burn the levayna the next day, Rabbi Yossi Yaimer pasal ve'ein beikaris. Rabbi Yossi will say in that case, it's going to be pasal. It's not going to have a dim pigel. It's just going to be pasal. The psal is only midirabanan, but it's not going to be a machshavas pigel to be mechayiv kars. The chum pigel v'chayiv and love kars. The chum say it is pigel and you are chayiv kars. So obviously, what is Rabbi Yossi saying? Why is it like that? Amrulai, the Chacham said to Rabbi Yossi, "Ma shinazu in azevach." How is this any different from a carbon? That if you have a machshava to burn the emurim the next day, when you bring a carbon, you have in mind to be burn the emurim la'achazman, it's going to be pigel. So what is any different if he has in mind to burn the levina? Amalahen, shazevach nami upsar ve'murayecha. By the carbon, they're all one thing. There's the animal and its dam, and the basa that's going to be burnt, or the basa if it's an oila, the whole basa, if it's the emurim, the chaylev that's going to be burnt, the emurav, all of it is part of the same thing. Well, levina ain't min amincha, but levina is a separate entity. It's not together. It's not included. It's not unified with the mincha, and therefore the machshava on the burning of the levina is not going to pass. Now that itself is still not sufficient to really answer us. What difference does it make if it's not unified? So the Gemara is going to say it doesn't mean just like what it seems to mean. It means a little bit more than that, and the Gemara is going to explain what it does mean. But before we get to the explanation, why do you have to say that Rabbi Yossi is maida by the burning of the lechel shireh lahakta kaimsa? Because he wanted to say that he wanted to distinguish between what machshavas on a mincha are going to be a machshavas pigel that's chayiv karas, and as opposed to a machshava to burn the levina, which is not a machshavas pigel. Mao de tema. So why do you say it? Mao de tema time of the Rabbi Yossi mishum kasavar a mefaglim b'chatzi mater. I might have mistakenly thought that the reason why Rabbi Yossi holds that it's not going to be a machshavas pigel when he has the mind to be machashav on the levina is because you can't have a machshava on something which is not the full matir, meaning that after you burn the kaimitz as well as the levina, at that point the shirayim of the mincha become mutter lachila. So I would say since they combine together, you need both of them to be matir the shirayim b'achila. When you have in mind only a portion of the matir, only one of the two matirim, which is the levina, that's not enough. And then you'd say it would be the avafilu reishanami. If that was the case, if you're saying that if you burn if you have in mind to burn the levina tomorrow, it's not going to be good because it's a chatzi mater. If he has in mind to be makter the kaimitz also, the flour of the kaimitz, that would be the same thing as just burning the levina. Having a machshava on the levina, just having a machshava on the burning the kaimitz would only be a chatzi mater. So that's why we have to say a kaimitz samincha or lahakter kaim salamacha. Rabbi Yossi is moida because it's not that he holds a mefagel b'chatzi mater. Reishanami kamashman de baham moida. That's why we have to say that Rabbi Yossi would agree that it's not a din of a mefagel b'chatzi mater. It'll be for a different reason that we're going to explain. So we continued. The Mishnah continued. Lahak lo einasu lamacha. Rabbi Yossi amepasul ve'em beikaris. Rabbi Yossi says if someone brings the kaimetz or does any of the avodas having in mind to be makter levina chutz lezmana, Rabbi Yossi would say it's going to be possible, but there's not going to be a din pigel. It's not going to be a machshavas psul. It's not going to be a machshavas pigel. Amar Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says, "I'm Rabbi Yossi ein matir mefagelas hamatir." The reason that Rabbi Yossi is because one matir cannot having a machshava about a matir cannot be mefagel another matir. So what does that mean? Let's see Rashi. Ein matir, the third line. Ein matir mefagelas hamatir. Ein avoidus matir zeh going kaimitz. Mayelas lefager matir acha halavayna b'machshava shumachashav halavayna b'avoidus hakaimitz. You cannot, when you're doing an avoida, he's doing an avoida of kmitza. If he has in mind you also need to do the levina on the mizbeach in order to be matir the shirayim. If he has in mind the other matir of the shirayim, is not going to make it pigel.
Basically, we're saying soilus is the main thing, right? Levina is sort of secondary.
When you say it's not secondary. I don't think that's correct. They're both equally required to be matir the shirayim. If you don't burn either one of them, the shirayim are not going to be mutter. So Rish Lakish is saying that Rabbi Yossi holds that since they're both the matirim of this mincha, that they're going to allow the shirayim to be eaten. So if you're doing the avoid of kmitza, since there are two matirim, if you're doing it on if you're having a machshava on the other matir while you're doing the avoid of the kmitza, that's not going to be a machshavas pigel. Sagt die Gemara, v'chein ata oime b'shnei bezichel levaina shalecha maponim. He says similarly, and this is going to be a little interesting. It's not like you were thinking that's because they're different things, that the levina and the kaimetz are two different things. That's why you can't have a machshava while you're doing the kmitza on the matir of levina. But just because they're distinct, because they're two things. Because we find we've had the lechem apanim. The lechem apanim is almost a form of a mincha. That the lechem apanim is every week the kohanim would bring, they would remove let's do it like this way. Every week they would bring the lechem apanim with shnei bezichel levaina and leave it on top of the shulchan, and that was sort of the beginning of that avodah. And then when they would take away the two bazichin, that was similar to the kmitza that you do on a mincha. And those two bazichin, there were two bazichin, one on each group of 6 lechems. then both of those bezichim would have to be burnt on the mizbeach. So he says, according to this, according to what the way Rish Lakish is understanding Rabbi Yossi, he would say the same rule would apply if you took one of those Shnei Bezicha Levina, if you burnt only one of them, if you had a machshava, to burn one of them, chut l'zmani, that would not be enough to be matir because it's two separate. There's two separate matirim here. So one bazichin. I'm sorry, if he's burning, not when he separates them, but when he's in the middle of burning one of the bazichim on the mizbeach, he has in mind that when he does the other one, he's going to do a chutz l'zmani. That's also not going to be a machshavas pigul because he's having a machshava on one matir on another matir. Why do you have to tell me the second in l'chayr? It's the same thing. I might have thought that the reason why we say having machshava on levoina while you're doing the kmitza of the soilus is not going to be effective to be a machshavas pigul is because they're two separate minim. They're two separate things. Since they're identical, they're just two of them. Maybe that would not be considered the shnei matirim. Ema b'fagli hadadi kamash malan. That's what it's. That's why he had to tell you. That's why Rish Lakish said that Rabbi Yossi would hold his din even by the Shnei Bazichim. Zok tomorrow, mi matzas amrit. Time Rabbi Yossi levaina la mishum de la mina de mincha. How could you say that that Rabbi Yossi doesn't care that the levaina is different than the kaimitz? That's not relevant. The point is just that it's two separate things. V'aktani sefer amuloi ma shinsa min hazevach. In the sefer of our Mishnah, he asked, how is the Mishnah? How the Chacham asked him, how is the Levina when he has a machshava on the Levina? How is that any different from someone who does the let's say does the shchita of a carbon or the zrika of the carbon, and he has in mind on the haktaras emurim, which is two separate things. He says so. He's mechalik that the zevach is and the basar of the emurim, they're all part of one thing, and the levina is distinct from the mincha. L'chayr, that means that the reason is because levina is different. It is something different, not that it's just because it's two things, but because it's two matirim. It's just a raw number of how many matirim it is, but it's because they're also different matirim. By the emurim and the dam, they're all part of the same animal, so we look at them as one. Enved the Gemara, my eina min mincha. So what does it mean when he says eina min mincha? When he says by levina, he says eina beikov mincha. He just means to say that the levina does not have a requirement that you have to first burn the mincha before you can burn the levina. What does that mean? The lavki hechdem akavlu kaimitzu shirayim. We don't say that you can't eat the shirayim until you burn the kaimitz. The kam de la miskata kaimitz la misachli shirayim. That is the case. That until you bring yamak to the kaimitz, you can't eat the shirayim. Hachanami mahakavlu levina. Maybe I might think you can't burn the levina until you burn the kaimitz. That's not the case. Eli boy hai mak de bereisha, boy hai mak de bereisha. But you can burn whichever one you want first. So therefore, since therefore the kaimitz is not matir the levina. Masha Einkein, the emurim, the zevach, the obviously bringing the carbon, and all the avoidus hadam of the carbon are all necessary before you can be makta the emurim. So since they facilitate, they make it able to be makta the emurim, so therefore they're not considered to be that they're shtei matirim, because they are on different lanes. But the Levina and the Ketairis, I'm sorry, not the Ketairis, the Levina and the Kaimitz are both things that are matirim, and they're equals. You don't need to bring. You could bring. You could either burn the kaimitz first. You could burn the levina first. So they're not dependent on one another. So therefore, having a machshava from one on the other on something that's more of an equal, according to Rabbi Yossi, that's the reason why he says it won't be a machshavas pigel. V'Rabbanan. The Gemara says in the Rabbanan, they agree in theory with it. Ki amrin ein mate mefaglas amate. They're maskim to the klal that one mate cannot be mate, can be mefagla mate. But they limit it. Hanimila hechadol ikvu b'chad mana. They say that a levina and a kaimitz, since they were, like we said when we gave our description of how the mincha works, that you first put the silas, the sarin silas, together with the levina into the kli. Then you separate the levina in order to the kaimitz, but then you put them back in the same kli. So they really are both put into the same kli. That makes them like one, and therefore it's not going to have the din of ein mate mefagel mate. Okay. Amr of Yanei. Rav Yanei says a further din. Likud levina bizar puzzle. Having a zar, we know that the avodas of the dam of a carbon, besides shchita, they all have to be done by a kayan. He says the same thing will be, but the gathering from the levina from on top of the mincha, that also, if it's done by a zar, it's going to be possible. My time, what's the reason? Or mishum halacha naguba. It's a form of halacha. It's similar to the halacha that you do by a carbon, by a zevach. Why? Because he says that when you do the likut of the levina, even if the kayin does it and he doesn't go anywhere with it, but since he's moving it from the mincha out of the mincha, that's moving it some distance. Even though he doesn't walk with it, it's still considered halacha. Halacha bezar psula, and therefore, if it's done by a zar, it's possible. Amar of Mary, Afanan Namitina. We already learned this in a Mishnah. This is in the Mishnah on the previous blot, that long Mishnah. We said the rule that anyone who does any of the four avodas of the mincha, which is the kaimitz, v'noisim b'kliva, amayla v'amakter, bishlam kaimitz, hainu shoichet. We understand kaimitz is equivalent to shchita. A mailach nami hainu mailach, and obviously mailach is similar to halacha. Makter hainu zayrik. And when you burn the mincha, the kaimitz and the levina is similar to the zrika. It's the final achila of instead of the dam of the kaimitz. Elanoisim bekli maika of it. What are we considering the putting it into the kli when you take the kaimitz and you put it in the kli? If you're going to say that's similar to when you shecht an animal, the dam gets makubal in a kli. Midami, are they similar? By a dam, by when you shecht an animal, you cut the animal's throat and the blood spurts out and it goes out by itself. There's no one taking the dam and putting it into a kli. It goes from the animal directly. Mashenkin over here, the kayin is taking both the kaimitz as well as the levina and putting it into a kli. So how could you compare them? Ella, so why is it? So what would be the reason? Amar Rameri. So what Rameri says, what would be the reason why it would be considered why the Kabbalah putting the dam of a behema into a kli is considered a avoda if it doesn't require any action? Since you can't have you're always going to need a kli to be makabel the dam, even though it doesn't require an action. It's considered an avodah chashuva. So you have to say, so it's the same thing, that just like the dam going into the kli, since it's going to have it's necessary. That's going to be a din of Kabbalah. It's going to be an avodah Kabbalah. So this too, the kaimitz taking the kaimitz as well as the levina and putting it into a kli is also going to be an avodah chashuva, and therefore it's going to mashvi like Kabbalah. It must be like Kabbalah. So over here, when he puts it, when he takes it, when he takes it out of the kli, it has to be done. So it's not going to be Kabbalah, but it's going to be halach. So he answers back to Rameri, that's not necessarily the case. What you're saying, la'olam the dami l'Kabbalah. Really, it's dami to Kabbalah. Ka'ashala chasam mela hachashakal v'rami. And you're asking that by the avodah of Kabbalah Saddam, it happens by itself. So this is not similar because he's taking it by hand. He's taking the kaimitz and he's taking the levina by hand. That shouldn't be Kabbalah. Michti Travaya Kedushas Klihu Mali Memela Mali Kashakal V'Rami. The Gemara is basically reverses itself and it says the important part is that it goes into a kli, and that's what makes a Kabbalah. Regardless of how it got there, that's going to be the avodah of Kabbalah. It's not going to be the avodah of halacha, which the chayra should result in that it should still be also for a zar. It should be likat levina bizarre should be possible, but maybe it's not exactly clear where this, according to Mary, where it would end up as far as the original question of whether likat bizarre is psul or not. Is it only because it's halacha that it would be possible, or even Kabbalah? Do we say that since it could happen memela, maybe the zar is not so important on that? Okay, we'll stop over here, and Bez Hashem tomorrow we'll continue by the next Mishnah.
Okay, 10 to 8.